You're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam, streaming on iTunes, Google Podcasts, and at DCAUreview.com. Now, here's today's episode.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 67 of the DCAU Review. This week, I'm your host, Cal, and with me, as he always is the DCAU Review Twitter guru, my good friend, and the guy that I grew up with, because he's my brother. It's Liam. Liam, welcome back to the DCAU Review.
Yeah, we're breaking into Season 2 of Batman Beyond as we tackle it all month long here. And we got a very interesting episode to talk about today.
That is for sure. Now, if you were with us last week, which hopefully you were, and if you weren't, you can check us out on your favorite streaming platform, or every episode is always available at DCAUreview.com. So if you checked us out last week, you know that we wrapped up Season 1 with a somewhat disappointing dud of an episode.
Yeah.
Where they kind of did away with the Blight / Derek Powers character. So now, of course, when we were doing the research for that, we stumbled upon an article that may or may not be accurate. Still didn't get much confirmation on that, but there was this sort of idea that the directive for the episodes were going to start shifting more towards Terry's life in high school. And we have an episode today, Liam, that focuses heavily on the high school life of one Terry McGinnis.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. The episode in question is, of course, Splicers, Season 2, Episode 1. Last season, they did the Winning Edge episode, which was, I thought, sort of the Terry's friend does drugs episode.
Right.
And there's a little bit of that in this episode as well, as Terry and Dana's friend Chelsea has begun splicing. But it's not really focused on that so much. It's more that it's kind of this hip new trend, and Barbara Gordon's husband, Sam, the DA, is crusading to get it made illegal, this new splicing trend. And so then this evil doctor, Dr. Cuvier, and his henchmen decide to go after that and run afoul of Batman. But before we get into our main plot discussion...
I was going to say, that's a good synopsis, but let's go to the official Imdb synopsis,
correct.
Shall we?
This is one of my favorite ones yet. And so, the synopsis for Splicers, which was written by Evan Dorkin and Sarah Dyer and directed by Kurt Gaeta, that synopsis reads as such. Splicing genetics into humans is the new thing among the kids at Terry's school. The city wants to make it illegal due to overly aggressive behavior in the subjects. Batman is suspicious. Might be my favorite one yet.
Batman is suspicious. That's good. I feel like we should break into Stevie Wonder, very superstitious here. But we won't. We'll save the listeners that pain. That's let's go ahead and jump into the plot. As you said, it starts out sort of leaning towards that, it's a hip new thing, and they even talk about Terry expresses some concern himself, of course, because he's the no fun kid that sticks to all the rules, and it gets pushed back from Dana, who says that, everything that we like to do is frowned upon by the law or is illegal or something like that. It's like, okay, that's something
What's
to
Dana
say.
doing in her free time? She has a lot of free time because Terry's such a terrible boyfriend to her.
The worst.
So I imagine, was she just like knocking over liquor stores and stuff when Terry's not around?
Tweet Liam at the DCAU Review with your ideas of what Dana does with her free time and is against the law. Please do. I couldn't tell you, but I thought that was an interesting way of her communicating Terry to lighten up, because everything we do is illegal. Okay, if you say so. So this story, I give them an E for effort. I think the idea is certainly interesting enough. Of course, we get into, they actually retroactively use this. We talked about before we went on the air and some of the Justice League stuff.
Yeah.
Where they, I believe they assign this to Dr. Milo.
Yes, Dr. Milo mentions that he's been working with splicing technology, and that Dr. Langstrom's research was very instrumental in it. I think it's in the Doomsday Sanction episode.
Okay.
Whatever that episode of where the Cadmus has the board meeting and they're going around the room, and like Hugo Strange and whoever else are at the table. But they talk about Dr. Milo being the one responsible for this project about splicing human and animal DNA together.
And now we haven't tackled the Batman the Animated Series episode, Moon of the Wolf, or there's what's Tiger, I think is the other episode that has Dr. Milo in it. But, of course, he is a Batman the Animated Series character that they then used later on in the scene as sort of a, as a nod or a connection to the Batman the Animated Series. There's a cool commentary where they talk about why they chose the characters they did for Justice League Unlimited. But we're getting out of sorts here. Anyway, so the splicing idea I thought was, okay, so they're introducing something, a short genetic mutation in the future. Okay, that's fine. And it would make sense that teens want to do this. And, of course, they do the comparison to, Terry does the comparison to, tattoos and stuff like that. So, okay, that's fine. My biggest issue, I think, with this is that I don't know. It's just weird. It's very middle of the road. I wasn't offended by it. It's goofy. It's goofy. But it doesn't, I don't feel like it takes itself so seriously to the point where you have to give it a bad grade necessarily, like a poor grade. It's like, this is taking itself way too seriously. But at the same time, I don't know. It's just a weird, okay episode.
Yeah, it's not terrible, and I do like the idea, and obviously Splicers come back many times throughout this series and are referenced in some of the other shows, as we've already mentioned, and the comic books and stuff. So it's a really cool concept, and I like the concept of it. That side of it is cool. The episode itself is just kind of Terry does some investigating, gets captured, gets turned into a man-bat, a literal man-bat, for about 30 seconds before Bruce cures him, and then just has a big fight with the doctor, who turns himself into a snakebird lizard.
Man,
and then into some sort of giant hulking monstrosity when Terry injects him with
all kinds of DNA.
Yes.
Lobster DNA clearly is in there, or crab DNA.
Scorpion maybe or something.
DNA, yep. There was a whole bunch of DNA he gets jammed with.
Yeah.
He just turns into one giant Glenn Murakami creation.
Yes.
That's what we said.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more in visuals. But yeah, and then Ace and Terry fight the thing, and it blows up, and that's kind of the end. Other than there's a little sweet moment where, Barbara is again trying to talk Terry out of being Batman and talking about how it's a thankless job, but, for the first time to this point in the series, Terry and Ace have had a bonding moment, and they get along now, so that's sort of the sweet ending is the dog likes him now after 14 episodes.
And that was, I don't know, that last conversation, the final scene is them standing outside of this building after it's exploded, and Barbara tells Terry that he shouldn't be Batman, this is a thankless job, that he, living in this, it furthers that dynamic of what we talked on in Touch of Curare, where we talked about how she kind of stood up and said, "Hey, this isn't a life. You don't want this.
Yeah.
Bruce is using you. You shouldn't do this." And Terry, pushes back on that. And then similarly here, she's like, "You need to stop this. This isn't a life for you. These close calls and almost dying. This isn't really a life." And Terry's response is that it's okay because now he and Ace are friends. Okay.
Yeah, it's not a great seminal episode, and doesn't feel like there's any great character growth beyond. Yeah, the dog likes him now. But yeah, like I said, I guess it works in the sense that it introduces the concept of splicers and sort of what they can do, and the more you mess with your DNA, the more feral and crazy you get. So that's obviously sets up some stuff for later, but as in all, I guess we can get into scores here. I gave it 5 out of 10, because again, I didn't hate this or anything, but it's really not, other than the initial concept of splicers, I didn't find myself really drawn into any of the stories they were telling.
I gave it the exact same score, 5 out of 10. Yep, all those reasons. All right, let's move on to our next category, Liam. We'll talk about animation visuals. There are some interesting animation visuals here in this episode because of the concept of splicing, which I appreciated. I appreciated a lot of the character designs. The mix between the DNAs, of course, allows the creators to have some fun with some of the designs.
Yeah, definitely.
With that said, I hated the final boss design. Dr. Cuvier's transformation into the bird snake cheetah man thing. He looked ridiculous, and we'll talk a little bit about with the voice afterwards, but the matching of the look with the voice was not imposing at all. It was not terrifying at all. If it had been something more akin to what he ultimately transforms into the Murakami creation, then okay, that's terrifying.
Yeah, the one at the end who's like looks like some combination of Plasmus from the Teen Titans show and just
the thing from the Superman episode, Bad Adawa and the Bad episode, Jar Unity.
Yes, just all these weird, tendrils, and there's weird claws coming off it, and he has like one big white eye, and it's really grotesque. And if he was already starting to mutate and then Terry made it worse, it might have been interesting. But he's just like in full control and talking in his normal voice as this bird, lizard, snake thing. And it's just not imposing, and it's not a particularly exciting fight. No. At least once he transforms into the monstrosity, then it's like this giant thing, and he holds Terry and Ace in its giant claws. And
he doesn't have legs, but somehow is able to propel himself to leap at Terry at certain points.
He winds his tail up like a spring and jumps, I guess. I don't know. Is there a snake that can do that? I'm not familiar with that.
I'm not a big fan of snakes, so I try not to do as much research about them as possible.
Yeah, maybe that would have been cool if he had to move with his arms or something. So there's a little bit of gorilla in there.
If you would give it, and initially we talked about it because I had not seen this episode in a very long time, so I had no memory of him turning into this bird, snake, cheetah man thing. So my initial thought was that he was going to turn into some sort of dinosaur type creature because he has the ability, apparently with whatever DNA he initially splices himself with, to change the size of his hands.
Yes, he can grow and retract these big claws like Lady Deathstrike or something. It's
right. So my thought was, okay, he's going to be and he clearly has some sort of reptilian type eyes in his initial state. So my thought was, okay, he's going to be this dinosaur type creature. And it's interesting. I haven't mentioned it yet, but in his initial form, his Dr. Cuvier form or whatever, we noticed clearly right off the bat that he's an ode to Vincent Price.
Yes, you pointed that out right away, and it's pretty striking. And that's a cool idea because it's obviously something of a horror. They certainly when Terry's transforming into the Bat, there's definitely they really try to play it like a horror movie. He's completely in shadow, and kind of throws the mask at Bruce and then steps out of the shadow as this monster.
In the prior scene, he's foaming at the mouth.
Right. So they really tried to push that side of him being this body horror type of terrible transformation. And Vince. But to your point, the Vincent Price character design was a pretty cool idea for Dr. Cuvier.
With that said, I did like some of the other character designs. Ramrod, the half bull, half guy, looks kind of cool. King Cobra looked kind of cool also, although we do get more Cobra splicing, I think, later on in other episodes. So this is just a kind of a foreshadowing. Some of the Splicers' appearance looked cool. I just felt like the payoff and the final boss fight, if you will, was disappointing and not at all imposing, at least at the beginning. So that knocked the points down a little bit for me. So I went ahead and gave the score an overall 7 out of 10. What about you? Uh-oh.
I also gave it a 7 out of 10.
We're 2 for 2. We've never had the same exact scores all the way through, by the way.
Yeah, so. that would be quite a record. But no, I also like the designs for Tigress, who is the lady helper, and then we also get our first appearance of Terry's friend Max, who obviously becomes a much more important character, probably in just a few episodes here, but for the rest of the series. But so the visuals, I think, are by far the most interesting and most fun part of the episode. But solid and good for the visual department here.
All right, let's step over to music. Another one of those episodes, Liam, where I don't have a ton to say about it. There was certainly some music playing during the final fight. but it's more background music. There's some music that punctuates the transformation scene and the reveal of Terry coming out of the shadows as the man-bat-like creature.
Yeah.
But other than that, there's not. It's mostly fill-in music, no pieces that stood out to me, and that that usually means I'm going to give the music a 5 out of 10 at that point.
Yeah, I was slightly worse than that. I went 4 out of 10.
Ooh.
Because I really...
No exact scores this week. Sorry,
yes.
guys.
Yeah, sorry, we broke the record. But, I was waiting for some great grand... Because maybe it's the Vincent Price character model made me think you're waiting for, like, this grand, like, old school...
Organ?
Yeah, like an organ, or, like, even if it's, like, an electric organ or something, more modernized. But this really, this horrifying thing when this hulking monster is revealed. And it's just kind of... the same music we would hear in almost any other Batman Beyond fight scene. Not that music is bad, but for this episode, it's kind of like, we've talked about it in the past, but like, certain Superman episodes, like the Lobo episode, there's a lot of electric guitar. We don't hear a lot of electric guitar the rest of that series.
Right.
So it really stands out because it's a unique character and they wanted to give the music a unique feel. And here, it's such a unique looking character, and all these splicers are such unique villains for Terry, but they just kind of... Yeah, the music doesn't really add anything to it, and so I was kind of disappointed by it, quite frankly.
I don't disagree with you about anything that you said there, and I think it's hard when you're comparing so many different series as we have been throughout this entire 67 episodes or whatever.
Yeah.
we are now. By the way, don't forget, check out the archives at DCAUreview.com. But one of the things that made the original Batman the Animated Series so great, we've talked about it before, is the fact that they had so many unique individual soundtracks for an episode. And it sounded like each episode, for the most part, has its own individual score, and there's a reason for it, and there's a thought process behind it, just like you would in a movie. A lot of these episodes of the later series, whether it's Batman Beyond, there's enough unique stuff in Batman Beyond where I think it stands out more than maybe Justice League or Justice League Unlimited. Mm-hmm. But the music clearly was not as important or as much, maybe as much thought, or could obviously budgetary or whatever, didn't go into those episodes as they did originally in the Batman Animated Series.
Yeah.
The original Batman Animated Series, it was a huge part of the production, it was a huge piece and an important part, and gives those episodes atmosphere. Even some of the episodes that we haven't loved, or maybe the story's been a little bit weaker, the theme songs in those episodes pick those episodes up. Whereas this episode, a better score, or like you said, a more unique score, something that stands out, could bring this overall score up a little bit. But yeah, it just kind of is, it's there.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, let's go to our final category, Liam. We'll talk about voice acting. Before we get into scores, of course, we will talk about our guest actors and our cast this week. Who do we have of note?
Yeah, so we have Ian Buchanan as Dr. Cuvier. He probably most famously to our audience also goes on to play the Ultra Humanite in Justice League.
Mm-hmm. Have we covered that? Oh yeah, we did.
We did Injustice for All, so we've done at least one of his
available
appearances.
in the archives.
Yes, but I think he does a pretty good job.
I would say yes with a caveat.
Okay.
I think he does a great job, and it's not his fault. He does a great job in the incarnation of the Vincent Price lookalike. Once the transformation into Bird Cheetah Snake Man happens, coupled with the god-awful design, it looks and sounds ridiculous. Did not sound imposing at all. I said right away as we were watching it, they should have done some sort of vocal effect on him to make it sound more intimidating, because overall, and I think we may have even mentioned that when we did Injustice for All, but his voice is very distinct, and it sort of fits the Ultra Humanite character because he's this refined, clearly brilliant, educated, and smart. Like, he's smart. Yes. He's brilliant. He's a brilliant scientist that happens to have his brain placed in a gorilla's body.
Right.
He's refined. He's cultured. He's watching PBS. Like, right. He listens to NPR. Like, this is who that character is. So this character also clearly as a mad scientist type character, and he gets a little bit more menacing and ability to be menacing in this because he's the sinister mustache twirling type mad scientist. But once the transformation happens, that voice does not in any way communicate an imposing figure.
Yeah,
and like I said, the design didn't help him at all either.
Yes, yeah. When he's in bird, snake, lizard mode, and he's just talking in his normal voice, it's pretty silly, quite frankly.
And the like I said, the design, the beak makes him just looks like he has a long nose. It just looks, his eyes are goofy. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, overall, I think he does a good job when he's just playing the evil doctor, the mad scientist, as it were. But yeah, for as far as the rest of the cast, I'll save the biggest one for last. But we have Cree Summer, who plays Tigress, and also, as we mentioned, debuts as Terry's friend Max in this episode. Obviously becomes much more important, and
Does Max get a last name?
I feel like she does, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what. Gibson, maybe?
That sounds maybe.
Okay.
That sounds like maybe.
Or that's like a baseball player from the mid-2000s, one or the other.
All right, we'll follow up on that.
Google that and let me know which one. But anyway, but yeah, so just wanted to mention that because that's her debut. But obviously she's a quite legendary voice actress in her own right. Has done a million other roles in video games and cartoons and everything. So
for sure,
definitely wanted to mention her. And then the big guest star of the week, who quite frankly, once I figured out who it was, or once I saw who it was, I'm disappointed we didn't get more of him.
Yep.
But we have, playing the role of Ramrod, the, bull/ram guy, one Ice-T.
That's right.
Of Law and Order fame, and nothing else.
Nothing else. He's not known for anything else. Yeah. Ice-T, man, my opinion of Ice-T is he is such a terrible, god-awful actor that it makes it fun. If you've ever watched any, 5 minutes of Law and Order.
It's great when they have him do the exposition for whatever the story's about.
It's tremendous. It's so bad, and it's so one note, and it's so the only reason this guy was cast is because he's Ice-T.
Right.
That it works. I didn't think he was terrible in this episode. Nothing stood out as he wasn't asked to do much. He has 7 lines or something like that, and they're all delivered like Ice-T does his delivery, and that's okay because this character is supposed to be a drugged up, angry, half ram, half man character, so that's okay, and it works. I think it's just hilarious that they cast Ice-T for this character.
I'd love to know, and there might be commentary on this episode, so maybe I'll go back and listen to it after this, but I just love to know the process. Did they ask for him? Did they go through his agent? Did he, did his kids watch the show and was he just looking to get into voice acting and this was a foot in the door part for him?
Somebody knew him.
Right.
Or they bumped into him at Comic-Con and was like, hey, you'd be a great voice actor for a guest spot.
I'm fascinated by how Ice-T ended up playing this random henchman on this random episode of Batman Beyond, but
we'll have to see if we don't get any answers from the commentary, reach out to some of the content creators and see if they are able to or original content creators and see if they can shed any light onto how that process happened.
Definitely, but I guess we can start getting into scores here. This was a tough episode for me to score again because I don't think anyone's terrible, but I don't think anybody's good.
Yep.
And I will say somebody's terrible. Paul Winfield as Sam Young, Barbara's husband, effing sucks in this episode. He has 3 lines, and every line sounds like a 90-year-old man reading off a paper. And it sucks.
# real talk from the DCAU Twitter guru right here.
Yes, I'm sorry. I don't like to outright bury people like this very often. But he was just trash in this episode. Every time he spoke, I was like, you suck, dude.
That's fair. You did point that out.
But yeah, but again, other than him, which is certainly, he has, like I said, about 3 lines, so it's certainly not enough to bring my score further down. But I gave it 5 out of 10 because I didn't know how else to rate this. I don't think anyone's terrible, but I don't think anyone's particularly good or great either.
Yeah, I don't feel bad about your score because my score is lower. I gave it 4 out of 10.
All right.
And the reason is, again, I don't think it has more to do with the fact that they opted not to put a vocal effect on Snake Bird Lizard Man because it was laughable. I don't think that there is, like you said, there's no one performance that was like, that was awful or that was real bad. However, it was not a great vocal performance across the board. That whole end scene was completely undercut by the lack of sort of, I don't know, different circadence in the voice of who they cast. So if we're looking at it, it's not a low grade necessarily because of a god-awful performance, but just wasn't a great episode vocally for an episode that we're used to. A show that we're pretty used to having good vocal performances or good casting choices.
Yeah, agreed.
Although we did run into an same issue last week with Paxton Powers, if you listened to our episode last week, where we didn't necessarily think that the casting and the performance was necessarily the right choice there. So
yeah, I mean it's tough, and we talk about this all the time. And Andrea Romano is so legendarily great at her job as far as casting and voice directing. So I'm always generally going to put the blame more on the actor than on her because her batting average is so high, and she seems to be able to get great performances out of so many people. But for whatever reason, it didn't feel like anybody. And I think, again, we talked about that with everything else we've talked about with plot. It's not a particularly great plot. I don't think that Will Friedle or Kevin Conroy had much. Kevin Conroy probably has less than 5 lines in this episode. And, Terry is not that, doesn't have a lot to say. It's mostly just him reacting to various things that are happening around him in that episode.
And talking to a dog.
And talking to the dog. So I didn't think that was...
Ace's vocal performance was tops, by the way. The dog that they got is tremendous.
Good boy.
Very good boy. He single-handedly brought the score up at least by 1 point for me. Good boy. That's good. All right, Liam, that will bring us to our totals, I believe. No bonus points this week. We've been without bonus points for a while here. I don't know if that says more about us or the actual shows we've been watching, but that's interesting to note if you're keeping score at home. And using my head math, I'm fairly certain we have the exact same score, but we'll announce them anyway. My final score totals up to be 21 out of 40. What about you?
Mine is also 21 out of 40.
All right. Same exact score again. That's twice in the last 4 weeks, I believe, that we had the same exact score for an episode. So we are continuing the tradition of being right around, but occasionally right the exact same total at the end of the day.
Yeah, just a reminder, we never discuss our scores beforehand. These are all our off-the-cuff, first instinct scores that we try to give to these. So,
and we don't forget, we'd always love to hear your thoughts if you have scores or your thoughts over on that. Don't forget to always, Liam, they can tweet you at DCAU Review throughout the week, discussing this episode or even past episodes. We don't mind talking about stuff we've covered before. I guess that brings us to rewatchability, Liam. I would say that this is an episode that the folks at home are welcome to skip. Even though this is like you said, this introduces splicing into the community, I don't think it's going to be hard to understand what that is going forward. I think you could just Google Batman Beyond splicing and get a fine explanation.
And my guess is there's probably an explanation within the next few episodes of what it is again, because...
They're not going to leave you hanging.
You have to assume that at least a couple people might be watching for the first time or may not have seen the previous episode. So
I'd say this is a skip it. What about you?
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, especially if you've watched Batman the Animated Series or any other type of entertainment that has ever done a story where a human and an animal are combined into one monster creature, like it's really not super original idea, even
played out,
even within the world of the DCAU. So
watch other episodes that have that done better.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, so that will bring us to the end of this week's episode. As always, thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. Make sure if they allow you to leave a review, you can leave a review for us. That helps us out a lot. Gets more people involved in the conversation, listening to your favorite podcast, hopefully. Don't forget also, you can find every episode that we've ever recorded, as we've mentioned already today, at DCAUreview.com. We also break it down, Liam, by series. We even have like a top episodes category, so you can see the best of the best. Pretty soon, I think we're going to have to set up a worst of the worst category, but that's a project for the future for me. But you got anything else to add?
No, just definitely head to Twitter at DCAU Review. Tweet us what you think of this episode, any episodes that we're reviewing, We'll be announcing soon what we'll be reviewing for next month. In fact, we'll announce that on next week's episode.
We're super excited about that. What we get next week's the last week of August already? We got 2 weeks left in August, so we got 3 more weeks covering Batman Beyond. So why don't we talk about, Liam, give them a little preview. I believe next week's a double feature.
Yes, so next week will be a double feature, as you mentioned. We'll be reviewing Earth Mover and Joyride, the next 2 episodes. In sequential order of the season, we always go in order with the Batman shows here on this show. So look forward to that at the hashtag DCAU double feature next week.
That's right, double feature, a giant size, if you're a Marvel fan, I guess you would call it. Giant size episode coming next week. All right, well, I am Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And that will do us for this week's episode. We'll see you on next week's episode of the DCAU.
Goodbye.